All of this happened a few years ago. At that time, I had job problems and was renting a cheap apartment in a poor neighborhood. The apartment I rented was in a 3-story apartment building. I woke up from a spine-chilling shriek that was coming from above. It felt like the neighbors above me decided to sort their relationship out in the middle of the night. I have to tell you, that family was something else. A boozy moron, you could smell him from 200 meters away. A wonderful cocktail of sweet and stale whiskey. His wife, her favorite hobby was making a scene, complete with smashing dishes and throwing things out of the window. And their 20-year-old son, Timmy, who was probably not right in the head. Poor guy. I guess he was a victim of his parents' excessive drinking. His favorite pastime was running up and down the apartment building and ringing the doorbell of every apartment in the building. I woke up, put the light on, and decided to have a smoke while listening to my neighbor's business. But apart from the shriek that initially woke me up, I could hear no noises coming from them. So I put out my cigarette and went back to bed. But I didn't have a chance to go back to sleep, as a loud noise from above made me jump out of my bed. It seemed like something heavy had just fallen down. I legit thought that the ceiling would crumble down on me. There even was some peeled off paint on my bed. Damn. Now I had to go up to my drunkard neighbors and find out what was going on instead of sleeping blissfully in my own bed. Opening the door, I found that there was no light in the hall. I couldn't see a thing. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and went up the stairs. Coming up to the peeling door of the accursed family, I saw, through the peephole, that the light was on in their apartment. After hesitating for a moment, I rang the doorbell. No reaction. I rang the bell again. Nothing. To hell with it, I said to myself, and just as I was turning around to go back, I realized that the pale light I could see before through the peephole disappeared. Someone was standing on the other side of the door, and that someone was looking straight at me. Finally, I thought, ready to face the drunk out of his mind owner of the apartment, but the door stayed shut. I waited for a little bit and went back to my own apartment, hoping that they understood what I was trying to say by coming up to them. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. I wanted to run, but consciously stopped myself from doing that. I tried to calm down by telling myself that there were a million other situations just like this one, with that crazy family. Something happened when I finally made it to the stairs. Something that made shivers run down my spine. The door opened with a characteristic creak. I stopped in my tracks and felt my heart start beating twice faster. Bracing myself, I turned around and shone the flashlight on the door. It was half open. "Is there someone alive?" I tried making a joke, but my voice was shaking. No reaction, of course. After standing like that for about a minute, I decided that there was nothing to do for me there, and the best course of action for me would be locking myself in my apartment, getting into bed, and falling asleep. I quickly ran down the stairs, opened the door to my apartment, latched the door, went to the bedroom, and got into bed. I managed to calm myself down. And lying there and thinking about the situation, I realized how ridiculous it was. A grown-up getting scared of the dark and his drunkard neighbor's weird actions. Thinking about that, I started getting more and more drowsy. Out of nowhere, the doorbell rang, and suddenly the situation didn't seem as ridiculous to me as it did a moment ago. I got out of bed, went to the door, and looked through the peephole. My neighbor's son, Timmy, was standing just outside my apartment door. He was reaching for the doorbell with one hand and actively picking his nose with the other. I put down the phone, put the light on, and opened the door. "What's wrong?" I asked him, stepping out of my apartment. He didn't answer and just continued to pick his nose. I didn't wait for his reaction anymore, and instead took Timmy by the sleeve and, after shutting the door, started leading him back to his apartment. He was walking very slowly. It was obvious that he didn't want to go home. Finally, we came to his apartment. The door was wide open. It was dark inside. I felt anxious again. That damn apartment had sinister vibes. I felt as if someone was watching me from inside the darkness. It was driving me mad. "Well, Timmy, go on, go home," I told him quietly, almost whispering. I nudged him in the direction of the apartment, but went in the opposite direction myself, back to the stairs. I felt ashamed of being scared and sending a mentally impaired guy to check out the surroundings, so to speak, but I couldn't bring myself to act in any other way. Timmy was going very slowly, but I decided to wait until he was inside. Suddenly, Timmy turned around and told me in a very loud and very pleased voice, "Dad ate Mom." Well, that definitely wasn't something I wanted to hear. "Dad ate Mom," he said, and started laughing like a moron. I couldn't believe my ears. You could rarely hear him use articulated speech, and that's what he finally decided to say? I almost had a heart attack. I desperately wanted to believe that he was speaking nonsense. "What?" I asked him, continuing my backwards walk to the stairs. But all I got in place of an answer was him laughing and mumbling something inarticulate. Suddenly, Timmy vanished inside the apartment, as if someone had pulled him in there. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned around and took several steps at once on the stairs. I did it so fast that I twisted my ankle. At that moment, I heard footsteps coming from my neighbor's apartment. Without turning around, I continued jumping down the stairs on one healthy leg back to my own floor. I nervously tried to find the right key and cursed myself for having such a large bunch of keys. So many useless ones. The footsteps were coming closer. I could hear them just behind my back. Suddenly, I could smell a strong stench. That was definitely my drunkard neighbor. I wanted to cry. Finally, I found the right key and burst into my apartment, but I wasn't able to close the door in time. The neighbor was standing in my doorway. Half of his hair was gone. I couldn't understand whether it was pulled out by someone or not. His skin was abnormally pale. I could see his blue veins. His eyes were completely black with no whites or irises. He was completely covered in blood, from his jaw to his shoes. His mouth was open, and I could see his teeth. Not many were left. They were bloody. Just looking at his face, I could see that he was mad. It was unlike any of the states I'd seen him in previously. We looked at each other for about 5 seconds, and suddenly he started growling. It reminded me of a huge bulldog. He behaved like a beast creeping up on his prey. That sobered me up. I could hear it clearly in my head. "Run!" Despite my twisted ankle, I ran to my bedroom and slammed the door with a bang. I even propped it up with my back. After running to my door, the berserk neighbor didn't try the door handle. He scratched at the door with his nails, banged his head on it, tried to gnaw it with his teeth like a dog. All the while I was sitting propped up against the door and thinking if there was a way for me to somehow call for help without my phone. My iPad was near the bed, but I was afraid to move from the door for even a second. I lost track of time. I sat there till morning, listening to my neighbor scratching, growling, gnawing, and banging on the door. At the break of day, I heard a door open. It was the door of a neighbor who lived on the same floor as me, an old lady who lived by herself. I got up from the floor and screamed at the top of my lungs, "Run!" It got quiet for a while after that. My mad neighbor stopped making noises. Suddenly, I heard the cry of the old lady. It lasted for about 2 seconds. After that, silence again. It was all a blur. I have no idea how much time I spent sitting like that. I only know that after taking care of the old lady, that monster didn't come back to my door, so after a while I got the courage to go run for my phone and call the police from my bathroom. My mad neighbor was never found. I hope he's bitten himself to death and isn't walking somewhere freely to this day. After that incident, there was an investigation. For a time, I was even considered a suspect. but fortunately there was no trace of me in my neighbor's apartment. The case is still not closed.